The 2025 NFL Draft was expected to be Shedeur Sanders' moment. Many projected him as a top 10 talent and a headline quarterback in one of the most discussed college football storylines in years. Instead of walking across the stage on the first night, he waited through 3 days without a call. There was no celebration, only silence. When the phone finally rang at pick no. 144 in the 5th round, it was the Cleveland Browns. With that selection, the financial outlook changed dramatically. The Sanders family believes this was not a typical draft slide, but the result of coordinated action. They are pursuing a $100 million lawsuit alleging collusion across parts of the league. In the months before the draft, Sanders was consistently discussed among the top quarterbacks in the class. Television and digital analysts praised his poise, accuracy, leadership, and command. Scouts highlighted a 74.1% completion rate, record-setting stretches at Colorado, and his rise from an HBCU star to a national figure. Consensus expectations placed him in the first round or early second. Draft night unfolded differently. As picks accumulated, there was little indication that his name would be called. The atmosphere at his private gathering shifted from anticipation to doubt. When the Browns selected him late on day 3, projections for his first contract dropped from an estimated range in the mid-$30 million to approximately $4.6 million, with corresponding reductions in likely endorsements and long-term positioning. According to Deion Sanders and others close to the family, this was not about performance, injury, or conduct. They argue it was coordinated. Attorneys were contacted immediately. The allegation is straightforward. Sanders' value was suppressed intentionally. The family's position is that this was a calculated decision within parts of the league, not an isolated set of evaluations. The legal claims focus on communications that, if authenticated, could be significant. Internal emails, text messages, and owner-to-owner conversations. The family's representatives contend that these materials show a deliberate effort to avoid drafting Sanders in early rounds based on perceived image concerns rather than football merit. One message reportedly under review framed the decision in branding terms. Drafting Shedeur would mean inheriting the Prime brand. The complaint asserts that this view led some teams to discourage others from selecting him unless necessary, not for film-based reasons, but to avoid perceived attention and external pressure tied to his family's profile. A related thread involves speculation about team fit and willingness to play for certain franchises. Past public comments by Deion Sanders were interpreted by some as signals of an Eli Manning scenario. The family's view is that these were strategic statements, not ultimatums. They argue that rather than engage in discussion, teams chose a passive approach, no direct rebuttal, reduced contact, and a collective reluctance to invest a premium pick. If phone records and written communications corroborate coordination, these items could become central exhibits. Media tone shifted as the draft neared. Coverage that had emphasized production and leadership began highlighting intangibles, interviews, and perceived coachability. Anonymous sourcing appeared in multiple outlets, with claims that Sanders skipped combine drills out of arrogance, bristled at film critique, or told one club, "Maybe I'm not the guy for you," after a tense session. A widely cited line, "Nobody wants a celebrity backup quarterback," was voiced by Colin Cowherd and circulated as shorthand for risk. The Sanders legal position is that these narratives did not arise organically, but reflected a coordinated leak pattern that undermined his market value. The family's contention is that this was primarily about control and compliance rather than football ability. They point out that Sanders did not fail a drug test, was not suspended, and did not produce poor athletic testing. His college resume included elite stretches and significant program elevation at 2 stops. The legal claim asserts that the league's power structure resisted a high-profile player aligned with a high-profile parent coach and an independent media presence. The allegation is that teams sought to avoid the perceived complexity that would come with selecting him early. The financial impact is a core component of the damages claim. Had Sanders been selected late first or early second round, projected 4-year compensation would likely have fallen between $30 to $35 million, with immediate access to higher tier endorsement opportunities and the brand leverage that accompanies a franchise quarterback designation. As a 5th round pick, the initial contract value is a fraction of that total, and associated off-field opportunities are typically narrower. The suit reportedly seeks not only lost salary, but also the broader economic value linked to draft position, sponsorships, licensing, and the visibility that accelerates an early career trajectory. The filing's scope, as described by sources close to the family, extends beyond the league office. It may involve media outlets, scouting firms, and specific executives if discovery shows coordination or materially false statements that affected value. The argument is that the draft slide harmed not only Shedeur, but also the broader Sanders brand, affecting perceptions of Deion Sanders as a recruiter, coach, and public figure. The family's view is that narrative construction around brand risk and celebrity backup produced a measurable economic and reputational loss. If a court authorizes discovery, the process would likely compel emails, internal draft notes, and message archives from teams and third-party intermediaries. Subpoenas could be served on media organizations for sourcing records related to anonymous quotes. That level of transparency would be unusual and could reveal how information flows during pre-draft periods. The legal theory moves beyond a single player's evaluation to the draft's integrity, whether owners or executives acted in concert to reduce a prospect's value for reasons unrelated to football performance. The league has not publicly addressed these specific allegations. Background comments from executives characterize the claims as overreach. The family's camp maintains they have documentation sufficient to proceed. The comparison points referenced by observers include Deflategate, Spygate, and the Colin Kaepernick grievance, not because the facts are the same, but because of the potential scope, policies, practices, and the balance of power between the league and individuals challenging its processes. Another dimension of the dispute involves how the NFL perceives Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, and the autonomy he promotes. He built a large media footprint around his programs at Jackson State and Colorado, elevated his players' profiles, and spoke openly about fit and leverage. The family contends that this visibility, combined with statements about preferred destinations, triggered resistance. The complaint frames the response as a preference for compliance and predictability over independent branding and public negotiation. The suit also addresses the pre-draft decisions that critics point to: skipping the Senior Bowl, declining full workouts at the NFL Scouting Combine, and candid interviews about team fits.
He lied to us all when he said that this was going to be an open competition, a four-man open competition when it comes to the QB situation up there in Cleveland, in which, from the looks of it, all we've seen it be was a three-man race. The only people that has been getting reps in with the first team or with the veterans are Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, and Dylan Gabriel. We've never seen my boy Shedeur Sanders get a chance to get in. Even with him doing the things that he has been doing up there, he has yet to get in with the...
Shedeur Sanders was caught off guard by Coach Kevin Stefanski's recent remarks, which have sparked talk of bringing in another starting quarterback. Commentators are debating whether Stefanski's comments reflect eroding confidence in Sanders or a brief lapse in judgment, but the rookie now faces intensified scrutiny over his role.
The Browns, we got an analyst that says that Shedeur Sanders should have some kind of a ban? Banishment of some kind? Come again? Say what? For what? And we've got, this would be more troubling. If I'm a Browns fan, and this is where we're going to start, potential dissension in the ranks of the front office and the coach. And over what? Quarterback.
When a program's headline quarterback suddenly becomes the subject of sideline murmurs and quiet searches for replacements, the situation is unmistakable. It's a breach of trust. Shedeur Sanders, the passer who put Colorado back in national conversations with his production and profile, has just received a clear message that his job security is in question. Coach Kevin, the assistant previously considered to be in Sanders' corner, made remarks that ignited speculation about changing quarterbacks. Fans, analysts, and even Deion Sanders are now reassessing the team's unity and its true plan for the position. The comment was no accident. It was a deliberate signal that the staff may soon elevate a backup. For perspective, Shedeur Sanders did not step into ideal conditions last season. He was sacked so often that Colorado could have dedicated a locker to every opposing edge rusher who reached him.
Could I possibly go to bat for Kevin Stefanski as a great head coach? No, I couldn't.
Could you go to bat against him, saying he's a horrible head coach?
No, I can't. I think that's why we fall in the middle. I think that's why in a lot of these discussions, and that's why a lot of the rankings, you see him right now in that 15 to 20 range, somewhere in that middle pack of NFL head coaches.
I've said earlier, Kevin Stefanski has already been given more head coaches than any coach I've ever seen in Cleveland. Starting with the decision to move on from Baker and him clearly still having another level to get to in Tampa.
Last season, Shedeur Sanders often had to operate behind an offensive line that provided minimal protection, yet he still delivered precise throws and critical drives. At times, he seemed to be carrying a struggling roster almost on his own. Despite the constant pressure, he never complained, never threatened to transfer, and never acted entitled. He remained with Colorado because he trusted the program, trusted his father, and believed in the team's larger mission. That loyalty is why Coach Kevin Stefanski's recent statement that the quarterback competition is wide open struck so sharply. The remark implies that Sanders' starting role is insecure, as though the player who absorbed countless hits while holding the offense together is simply another name competing with walk-ons and first-year athletes who are still learning the cadence. This goes beyond ordinary coach language about fostering competition. It introduces genuine uncertainty about the staff's confidence in Sanders and invites speculation that Colorado is actively assessing outside options through the transfer portal. By characterizing the position as vacant, Stefanski has planted seeds of doubt that could quickly evolve into rumors and undermine the stability of the locker room.
I'm sorry, but when it comes to quarterback, I'm going to defer to my head coach, generally speaking, especially one with Stefanski's track record and how he's viewed across the league. So this is interesting because it tells you Kevin Stefanski's not a Shedeur Sanders guy. And it also tells us who made these picks. Exactly. The Cleveland Browns made a rather awkward decision in the NFL draft, opting to take quarterback Dillon Gabriel in the 3rd round well before he was expected to fly off the board. Then 2 rounds later, the Browns took fellow quarterback Shedeur Sanders. So what exactly is going on?
Discussion has begun about whether Colorado is actively evaluating another quarterback and preparing for life after Shedeur Sanders. Analysts are debating whether Coach Kevin's move is calculated strategy or a misstep that jeopardizes team stability. Sanders remains a top NFL prospect, Deion Sanders' son, and the program's public face. His highlights dominate social media and his jerseys outsell the team's victories. Yet he is once again being asked to reaffirm his position. The issue is more than routine roster management. It intersects with the family dynamics that shape the program. By portraying the quarterback job as open, Coach Kevin signals to both Shedeur and Deion that the staff is willing to move on despite Sanders' stature. For Shedeur, sitting through film sessions while hearing talk of potential replacements adds an unwelcome layer of uncertainty to an otherwise proven resume. The decision may reflect a desire for a quarterback with a different profile, perhaps someone more mobile and system-oriented, rather than a dismissal of Sanders' accomplishments.
Grab hold of the starting job. Yes, but I don't think we're going to know which one until we get deep into August. Now, I think we tracked the reps everybody was getting at practice throughout the OTAs and minicamp. But when you talk to people there, they just want to make sure everybody got what they needed. And that, Kenny Pickett, we find out if he has the goods to be the starter. Joe Flacco, they back him off a little bit. He's 40. He may not need as much. The rookies, Shedeur Sanders and Dillon Gabriel, what do they need to learn to make the transition from the college game to the pro game? That's what the spring was about for the Browns quarterbacks. Now,
Shedeur Sanders has moved from social media celebrity to on-field standout, and ESPN now lists him among its first-team candidates. Reactions are split. Some fans are impressed while others are skeptical. Whether this reflects Deion Sanders' long-term strategy or simply Shedeur's rapid development, the story is drawing widespread attention. Here's a look at what led to this moment.
They never planned on taking him. The problem is, like Ocho Cinco said, you got somebody that has endeared himself to the locker room. And guess what? The difference between him and Tim Tebow, the biggest one, is he can play. He can throw the ball. Tim Tebow running around being an H-back. He can throw the ball. And he's done everything he needs to do. He ain't saying nothing. He ain't rocking the boat. He ain't mad about the reps. He ain't mad about none of that. All the people out there want to see is this, like Tyver said earlier. We want to see what he can do with Jerry Jeudy.
Online reactions are sharply divided. Some fans strongly support Sanders, while others argue he is overrated. Traditional analysts cite statistics and claim his recognition comes mainly from his father's name. Sanders supporters are actively celebrating his rise and already predicting a future NFL career. Sports media outlets have made his candidacy a central topic of debate. The discussion now extends beyond statistics and victories to include his marketability, public image, and on-field presence.
Sorry.
Is Shedeur Sanders going to get a chance to win this job? Do you believe he gets a legit shot to win this job?
Listen, I think, first of all, the action's going to really start in training camp. Like, forget all the OTA stuff. You don't win a job in OTA. The real action starts in training camp. And just like Shedeur said, during the mini camp, when it's time to take your reps, you got to make the most of it. Because I think early on, there's going to be a lot. Remember, Joe Flacco didn't hardly practice in OTAs and mini camps because they were giving the young guys.
Right.
So when he gets his opportunity, he's going to have to make the most of it.
Analysts are closely reviewing game footage to evaluate Sanders' decisions and mechanics, while others examine his social media activity to see how he balances content creation with quarterback duty. Shedeur Sanders' placement on ESPN's early first-team list has taken over the college football conversation. Supporters circulate his highlights and argue that his on-field production and leadership justify the honor. Skeptics claim the recognition relies too heavily on his family name and question whether his resume is strong enough for first-team status. Analysts are rewatching game footage to assess his reads, accuracy, and pocket presence, while others examine how he balances a high-profile social media presence with quarterback responsibilities. The debate has pushed other storylines, such as conference realignment and NIL issues, into the background, leaving fans and commentators focused on Sanders' performance, marketability, and overall impact on the sport.
I'll keep saying it. I believe Shedeur Sanders should play more games than any other quarterback on this roster this year, because he's the only guy that I look at and say they might have something here. Because I'm telling you right now, they left night one of the draft saying we are taking our quarterback next year. So it's on Shedeur or Dylan or Kenny, probably not Joe,
to change their mind.
To change their mind.
But you got to find out. You got to find out.
Opinions differ on whether Sanders is benefiting from his family name or simply showing real progress, but the attention is undeniable. Social media is flooded with edited images elevating him to legendary status. Critics argue the first-team nod is driven by hype and marketability, while supporters point to his flashes of strong arm talent, field vision, and decision-making. Regardless of motive, the announcement has dominated the football news cycle and intensified debate over how much of his rise is performance-based versus media-driven. Highlight reels rarely show Sanders' turnovers, late-game mistakes, or inconsistent stretches. Being named to a first-team watch list suggests sustained dominance, something Sanders has displayed only in flashes. His selection appears driven as much by brand recognition and media appeal as by performance. ESPN's decision has intensified debate. Data-driven critics post statistics that question his resume, while passionate supporters predict awards and future NFL success. Commentators recall a time when first-team consideration required years of proven excellence. Yet many fans already see the announcement as confirmation that Sanders is on track for major college football honors.
Shedeur Sanders has earned first-team reps when training camp commences later in July. I'm not saying like he's the first guy up when you do 11 on 11s, day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 at training camp. I'm not necessarily saying that. But he's the one quarterback that we didn't get a chance to see take reps with the ones. But I think Shedeur has a chance to make this conversation interesting if he gets those reps with the ones and he has the same success that he did with the 2s, the 3s, and the 4s. I have confidence he can show you something, but I got to see it. We all got to see it before we can actually judge that.
Some believe Deion Sanders is already preparing for an award ceremony, while others are furious, threatening to protest ESPN's credibility over Shedeur's first-team mention. Critics argue that honoring Sanders without a full season of elite play undermines college football standards. Supporters insist his performance and profile justify the recognition. The debate reflects a broader clash between traditional merit-based evaluation and modern brand-driven visibility. In today's landscape, first-team consideration is no longer only about statistics. It also involves marketability and audience engagement. Whether welcomed or rejected, Sanders commands attention and embodies the sport's shift toward both performance and personal brand.
You made an interesting point. So I tend to have the drip, drip, drip. This was my Johnny Manziel theory, is that everybody makes mistakes, especially when you're young. But if I see 2, 3, 4, 5, then you've got a plumbing issue. It's not just you didn't close the faucet. So there's about 6 pieces of video in college where Shedeur was a little bit of a brat, whatever. Then there's the legendary cringy draft room. Didn't love that as a B prospect. Then there's back-to-back speeding tickets, both over 90, and a missed arraignment.
The NFL is navigating unexpected headlines after a former Browns coach publicly defended Shedeur Sanders in response to reports of multiple speeding tickets. The coach's statement has sparked extensive online debate. Supporters welcome the show of loyalty, while critics question the motive. Sanders now finds himself at the center of an unforeseen controversy, and observers want to know why a Cleveland coach is standing so firmly in his corner. The story is developing rapidly and continues to draw intense attention.
When it came out that he got a speeding ticket, I said it's not really that big a deal. I feel very differently about it now. Over 40 miles an hour over the speed limit, less than 2 weeks after you just got a ticket. I don't know if that's entitlement or immaturity. There's got to be some teams that are feeling very good right now that they didn't draft him.
Observers are focusing on Shedeur Sanders' recent speeding ticket, treating the violation as a measure of his character and sidelining his athletic, academic, and philanthropic accomplishments. The incident, driving 15 miles per hour over the limit in a borrowed Lamborghini, has drawn sharp criticism. In response, a former Cleveland Browns coach has taken the opportunity to comment, even though the franchise is widely viewed as unstable due to its frequent coaching changes and limited on-field success. By defending Sanders, he presents himself as an authority on discipline and leadership. The statement, coming from an organization seldom praised for stability, has nonetheless attracted considerable attention across the league.
You want to defend him a little bit. I thought this was an interesting take.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting that you said you were out because of the speeding tickets. To me, that's such a minor thing. You were so high on him in terms of his completion percentage in OTAs, and I thought that was a little aggressive on your part. But with the speeding tickets, I got a speeding ticket the first night of the draft, my first year there. I thought maybe I'd get the benefit of the doubt, but they gave it to me anyways.
As soon as the former Browns coach defended Shedeur Sanders, social media erupted with commentary, resembling the volume of draft night coverage. Posts and opinions appeared within minutes, and criticism escalated rapidly. Detractors amplified Sanders' minor speeding violation, while supporters argued that such reactions were disproportionate to a single traffic citation. Shedeur Sanders received 2 speeding citations, and the minor traffic issue quickly drew national attention. Before considering the former Browns coach's response, it is useful to clarify the facts. Sanders, son of Pro Football Hall of Famer Deion Sanders and a current college quarterback, was twice ticketed for exceeding the limit while driving a high-performance vehicle. Commentary on social media escalated rapidly, with critics framing the incident as a significant character concern, even as the league has historically tolerated far more serious legal transgressions. Stepping into the debate, a former Cleveland Browns coach, best known for a tenure filled with losses and contested decisions, issued a strong public defense. He argued that 2 speeding tickets should not define Sanders' reputation or overshadow his on-field talent and community work, urging a balanced assessment of the player's actions.
I don't love it from a 5th-round draft pick. I don't love that it happened multiple times, but I do think that this is the first time he's been away from his dad, and there's gonna be some growing pains now. Would I sell my stock on it like you are? Not because of a couple speeding tickets, especially in light of the problems that Brown's quarterback room has had to deal with legally in the last few years. I mean, this is nothing.
The debate quickly shifted from 2 speeding citations to broader claims about integrity, growth, and leadership. The former Browns coach framed the infractions as moments for personal development and urged observers to view them in context. Critics responded forcefully. Some called for disciplinary action, others questioned Deion Sanders' parenting, and a few sought to discredit the coach himself, despite his professional record already being widely analyzed across the league. The reaction underscores an apparent inconsistency in public standards. Fans often overlook on-field confrontations, heated sideline arguments, and other significant controversies, yet they treated Sanders' routine traffic offenses, speeding without evidence of reckless endangerment, as indicators of serious character flaws. If such minor violations were adopted as the primary measure of morality in professional football, many players would face similar criticism. Sports media amplified the story almost immediately. Television panels dissected Shedeur Sanders' decision-making, treating 2 speeding tickets as indicators of deeper character concerns. Networks aired detailed segments under banners such as red flags and road rage, repeatedly questioning whether the citations might affect his draft evaluation. Although Sanders is already regarded as a first-round prospect, analysts emphasize that NFL teams value discipline and legal awareness when forming final assessments. Many commentators overlook the fact that other high-profile players have faced more serious offenses without similar scrutiny. Throughout the coverage, the former Browns coach defended Sanders, portraying him as a talented quarterback subjected to disproportionate criticism in a culture that expects near-perfect conduct. His argument was thorough and methodical, asserting that the traffic violation should not overshadow Sanders' skills, work ethic, or future potential. Commentators point out that the coach's intervention was not entirely selfless. He recognized the publicity potential. One day he was an overlooked figure from a struggling Browns era, the next he was a trending name across sports media. The discussion quickly expanded beyond Sanders' speeding citations to questions of image management and narrative control. Critics demanded disciplinary measures, public apologies, team sanctions, and formal statements, yet their objections seemed directed less at the traffic infractions themselves and more at Sanders' high profile, confidence, and resistance to traditional expectations. In practical terms, Sanders' brand remains intact. The coach secures renewed relevance, and the episode supplies another headline in the ongoing story of modern football. The next time Sanders is seen in a high-performance car, the debate will likely reignite, focused not on speed limits, but on the broader culture of the league. Meanwhile, new voices continue to join the conversation. Broadcaster Colin Cowherd has already weighed in, offering his own reassessment of the incident and its broader implications.
Breaking news, Shedeur Sanders last night was pulled over going 100 miles per hour. All right, he clocked 101, 41 miles an hour over the speed limit in Cleveland. He will have the opportunity to fight the ticket in court. Now, I'm not exactly sure where he was pulled over, whether or not that it was in Ohio or whether or not that it was in his home state. But typically when you're going 40 over, that's flirting with the line of reckless driving. Folks, I gotta tell you, I don't understand what it is with these young men driving at absurd speed.
Colin Cowherd's view of Shedeur Sanders shifted abruptly. Days after praising the quarterback's poise and skill, he appeared on air to declare that Sanders is overhyped, unfocused, and distracted by celebrity. The reversal was immediate, without any gradual reconsideration. Cowherd now frames Sanders' 2 speeding tickets as evidence of poor judgment, even though he has defended other quarterbacks facing far more serious off-field issues. The sudden, wholesale withdrawal of support leaves viewers questioning the consistency of Cowherd's criteria and illustrates how quickly media narratives can change when minor incidents receive outsized attention.
This is
okay. Okay. How much of this is? I mean, Jimmy Haslam has his hands all over Manziel, has his hands all over Deshaun Watson. Admitted it, man enough to admit it. I saw the reaction in the draft room when they took Shedeur Sanders. It's pretty obvious it wasn't the coach and the GM's pick. How much is this? This team has 8 last place finishes in 13 years owning it. How much of this is we don't have a very good owner here like Washington, D.C. and the Commanders?
Yeah, I didn't love the owner stepping in and saying, hey, you got to take this guy in the 5th round. And I doubt they'll ever admit to it.
While Colin Cowherd urged teams to move on from Shedeur Sanders, former Browns coach Erick Mangini offered a more measured response. Mangini, whose tenure in Cleveland was marked by mixed results, used his platform to provide context rather than condemnation. Instead of sensationalizing the speeding violations, he encouraged viewers to consider Sanders' circumstances. A 21-year-old quarterback whose life is scrutinized both on and off the field. Mangini acknowledged that the tickets were mistakes, but emphasized that they do not by themselves define Sanders' character or future. He noted the extraordinary attention athletes receive today, combining the responsibilities of quarterback, public figure, and social media presence. Under such pressure, missteps are magnified, and criticism multiplies quickly. Mangini concluded that any evaluation of Sanders should weigh the totality of his behavior, performance, and growth, rather than isolate 2 traffic citations as decisive evidence of poor judgment.
Sometime last week, and then, and I just tweeted that out again this morning, and then today, the Joe Flacco one got posted. So running through this, and then of course we'll still have Dylan will be next, and then Shedeur will come last.
As training camp nears, Mary Kay Cabot is providing straightforward analysis of the Cleveland Browns quarterback competition. The starter has not been named, but she has moved away from her earlier skepticism of Shedeur Sanders and now acknowledges his talent and potential. Cabot explained that if Joe Flacco is chosen to start week 1, it will mean he is the most prepared to play immediately. This approach would also give younger quarterbacks such as Kenny Pickett time to adjust, refine their skills, skills and maximize their potential while Flacco handles the early workload. She added that a Flacco start would not prevent Sanders from earning the position later in the season. The depth chart remains flexible, and Sanders' continued development could put him in line for an opportunity as circumstances evolve. Cabot also noted that Pickett could win the job for week 1, but he must demonstrate he can integrate smoothly with the offense and perform reliably under pressure. The Browns want a leader who can control the huddle, execute plays efficiently, and maintain composure. Pickett's performances in upcoming practices and preseason games will be critical in determining whether he secures the starting role or Sanders ultimately takes the reins as the season progresses.
Things like that. It doesn't mean that that Kenny can't swoop in there and steal that job by them, but he's really going to have to show that he has a complete mastery of this scheme and this system, and that they don't have to dial it back a lot to put him in there. So these will be some considerations, and I do think that that as the preseason goes along, it will become evident.
Mary Kay Cabot recently stated that Shedeur Sanders is ready, and the Cleveland Browns are monitoring him closely. After a strong showing during organized team activities and minicamp, Sanders has made notable strides in his development. With continued progress, he is expected to return to the field prepared to contribute meaningfully. The Browns coaching staff is tracking his growth, and anticipation about his long-term role is increasing. Cabot added that if Sanders maintains this trajectory and continues to demonstrate poise within the team, he will have a legitimate chance to earn the starting quarterback job. Each practice rep strengthens his case, reinforcing the possibility that his development could benefit both the player and the organization. As Sanders impresses, discussion about his future in Cleveland becomes more compelling. Cabot also emphasized Sanders' advanced understanding of the offense. She noted that his football IQ appears in every drill and that he seems ready to execute the Browns system at full speed. His ability to process defenses quickly and make decisive reads distinguishes him from his peers. With the appropriate opportunity, Cabot believes Sanders could become a genuine difference maker for the Browns. One area Cabot highlighted is Sanders' command of pre-snap adjustments. His capacity to diagnose defensive fronts and communicate changes gives him an edge and reflects high football intelligence. If he translates those reads into consistent connections with his playmakers, he could elevate the Browns' offense significantly. By comparison, Cabot said quarterback Dillon Gabriel is still refining his grasp of complex terminology and play calling. While Gabriel possesses upside, Sanders' comfort with intricate concepts and his ability to manage tight pockets under pressure give him a clear advantage at this stage. Gabriel must sharpen those elements to compete at Sanders' level. Cabot previously reported that Sanders had already earned first-team practice snaps ahead of Gabriel. Her latest update confirms that Sanders is now approved as the Browns' starting quarterback, solidifying the organization's commitment to him as QB1. Expectations are high, and his response to the challenge will be closely watched throughout training camp and preseason. Cabot further noted that head coach Kevin Stefanski authorized Sanders to take expanded first-team reps beginning next month. This milestone underscores Sanders' readiness and the coaching staff's confidence in his progress. As the regular season approaches, Sanders aims to cement his status as the starter, and the competition for that position is intensified. Though Sanders leads the race, Kenny Pickett remains in contention. Cabot stressed that Pickett must prove he can integrate seamlessly with the offense and perform consistently under pressure. His performance over the next several weeks will determine whether he can challenge Sanders for the starting role. With both quarterbacks vying for the top spot, the Browns' Week 1 starter will be one of the most scrutinized decisions of the upcoming season. For now, Cabot's reporting underscores Sanders' rapid ascent, strong football intellect, and growing command of the offense, qualities that position him well to lead Cleveland's offense when the opportunity arrives.
Shedeur Sanders did not treat day 4 of Browns training camp as anything other than work. He completed 8 of 11 passes with 3 touchdowns, operating with control and accuracy throughout the red zone period. The throws were varied, a well-placed ball to rookie Luke Floria that led him across the goal line in stride, a firm throw to Cade McDonald over middle after a quick read, and a tight window completion to Deontay Johnson at the back of the end zone with 2 defenders closing. The sequence showed timing, poise, and placement under pressure. While national attention centered on Joe Flacco's underneath completions and Kenny Pickett's option and rollout periods, Sanders produced scoring plays on schedule. The performance was not the product of broken coverages or end-of-period reps. It came within structured work with defenders in position and the offense executing standard progressions. The accuracy rate, 8 completions on 11 attempts, reflected consistent mechanics and decisions. The operation was steady from huddle to snap to finish. Despite that session, the distribution of first-team snaps did not change. Camp logs indicated that Pickett and Dillon Gabriel continued rotating with the starters, while Sanders remained primarily with the second unit. With the first preseason game approaching, that choice drew more attention from observers who expected productive days to be followed by expanded opportunities. The question surfaced again: what additional evidence is required to evaluate Sanders with the top group? The 3 touchdowns illustrated different aspects of his profile. On the throw to Floria, Sanders used a measured trajectory to lead the receiver away from contact and into the end zone. On the ball to Johnson, he identified leverage, held the safety with his shoulders, and delivered to a precise spot at the back line. On the throw to McDonald, he eliminated the first read, reset, and drove the ball into the window before the hook defender could squeeze it. Each score reflected a particular tool: anticipation, manipulation, and velocity within standard timing. Comparisons to the other quarterbacks were straightforward. Pickett produced 2 touchdowns but placed 1 late ball that exposed a receiver to contact near the goal line. Gabriel accounted for 1 score, with additional gains coming on checkdowns and designed movement. Flacco advanced the ball in short increments without finishing drives during the same period. Sanders converted opportunities into points repeatedly and without turnovers. The rotation, however, remained unchanged. Head coach Kevin Stefanski and the staff continued to allocate first-team work to the same group, describing the process as an open evaluation. In practice, that has meant extended starter reps for Pickett and Gabriel, veteran scripts for Flacco, and second unit periods for Sanders. The disconnect between output and opportunity was notable, particularly given the stated goal of reaching an early decision at quarterback. When asked about the timeline recently, Stefanski said the preference was to decide sooner rather than later, an acknowledgement that the window for assessment is limited as preseason approaches. Speculation about motives is common in such situations. The discussion has included references to front office perspectives and ownership influence. Owner Jimmy Haslam is widely viewed as supportive of drafting Sanders. General manager Andrew Berry is known for prioritizing fit, traits, and process within the roster building model. Stefanski reports to Berry, and the practice plan reflects coaching evaluation within organizational parameters. None of that guarantees any outcome. It does explain why rotations can remain conservative even after strong individual periods. Regardless of internal views, the most useful next step for the evaluation would be a defined set of first-team snaps for Sanders to put comparable tape next to his peers. There was also outside attention on several practice segments from earlier in camp that showed Sanders throwing during lulls to non-receiver personnel, ball attendants, staffers, and assistants, while other quarterbacks were in script with full units. Those clips circulated widely and were interpreted by some as dismissive. Sanders addressed questions about it by narrowing the focus to preparation, explaining that his responsibility is to be ready for the work assigned and that he has adjusted at every level of competition, from HBCU ball to the Power 5 and now the NFL. The response matched his general approach: acknowledge the situation, maintain routine, and continue to execute when the next period begins. The broader draft day and narrative context remains part of the conversation. Sanders' college resume included efficient production and high completion rates across 2 programs, culminating in national recognition such as the Johnny Unitas Golden Arm Award. His selection in the 5th round was driven by varying evaluations of projection, scheme fit, and development timelines. The result is the current environment. He must present his case within limited windows, then wait for access to the next rung of competition. That does not make the process unfair, it makes it exacting. The best answer, for him and for the staff, is additional, comparable reps and clear tape. Fan reaction after day 4 was direct. Social accounts and comment threads filled with assessments that centered on performance rather than reputation. Sanders produced 3 touchdowns, avoided negative plays, and showed command in the red zone. Supporters pointed to that tape and asked for opportunities with the starters to verify whether the same rhythm carries over with the top receivers and linemen. The message was not about headlines. It was about the logic of evaluation in a compressed calendar. From an operational standpoint, Sanders' day reflected consistent fundamentals. His base was disciplined, his eyes matched his feet, and his timing aligned with route depths. On the Johnson score, he used a subtle shoulder turn to hold the safety before resetting and throwing to the back line. On the McDonald throw, the ball was out on the second hitch, arriving before the defenders could converge. On the Floria play, the arc and placement minimized the hit risk and maximized the run-through. Those are portable traits. They translate across units if the timing with receivers is established through reps. The staff's balancing act is real. They must prepare the presumed Week 1 starter with sufficient continuity, while also giving developmental players enough exposure to judge ceiling and floor. That tension is present in every camp. The cleanest path through it is to carve out defined first-team sequences for each competitor and evaluate the tape against comparable defenses and situations. High red zone, low red zone, third and medium, and 2-minute. Sanders' performance on day 4 strengthened the case for such an allocation. Context matters off the field as well. Earlier in the offseason, 2 speeding citations, 91 miles per hour in Brunswick and 101 miles per hour in Strongsville, prompted public comment from Barry, who emphasized standards and safety. Sanders accepted responsibility, stated that he learned from the incidents and moved on. In camp, he has kept the focus on football tasks, install retention, cadence management, protection IDs, and post-practice review. He has also continued to build rapport across position groups, including veteran receivers and defensive backs, so that timing and expectations are clear when reps arrive. None of this diminishes the experience of the veterans in the room. Flacco has decades of film, Pickett has multiple seasons of NFL starts, and Gabriel brings mobility and a defined collegiate profile. It does, however, underscore the purpose of camp, to align decisions with current performance. Sanders produced the most efficient scoring period of the day. The next logical step is to see that operation with the starting unit, document the results, and compare them to the other candidates under the same conditions. The preseason opener will compress timelines further. Install packages expand, and coaches begin to narrow personnel groupings. If the objective is to identify the quarterback who can operate the offense most cleanly on Sundays, then structured exposure now will give the staff better information later. A small but deliberate set of first-team snaps for Sanders, scripted early downs, a third down sequence, and a red zone series would provide data without disrupting broader preparation. Until that occurs, Sanders can only continue to control process and execution. Day 4 showed what that looks like when opportunities align. Efficient reads, disciplined mechanics, and finishes in the end zone. He did not seek attention for the sequence. He put it on tape. If the evaluation remains consistent with the stated competition, comparable snaps should follow. If they do, the staff will have a clear side-by-side measure. If they do not, the question from observers will remain the same. What more needs to be seen to justify the look? For now, the record from day 4 is clear. 8 completions on 11 attempts, 3 touchdowns, no turnovers, red zone precision, consistent control at the line and in the pocket. Those are tangible outputs. They merit a defined opportunity with the starters as the team moves toward preseason and the decision that follows. Whether or not that opportunity arrives immediately, Sanders has shown the preparation and execution necessary to be evaluated on equal footing. The next step is a matter of allocation, not speculation.
Shedeur is lighting it up in practice every day. You're not even a half bit curious to see what he could do with the ones. That makes no sense. And then on top of all of that, you got players going on podcasts and talking to people in the media saying this guy is really good. Like, this guy is legit. So even your peers respect you enough. How is it that the coaches can't see that? It always starts with the players, where the players like, hey, you see that? You seen that pass he threw?
The Cleveland Browns were taken by surprise when quarterback Shedeur Sanders stepped in for first-team snaps, asserting control of the drill and instantly highlighting deficiencies across the rest of the room. His confident command forced coaches to pause practice clips, reevaluate progressions, and consider immediate adjustments to the depth chart. Within minutes, discussions spread throughout the facility and online forums as fans weighed what Sanders showing means for the current starters. The organization now faces an urgent, data-driven decision on whether Sanders should move up permanently. Shedeur Sanders arrived at Browns practice, took several first-team reps, and the entire quarterback group immediately felt the pressure. Coaches erased the whiteboard and reviewed their plans. Staff members exchanged concerned comments, and observers began asking whether Sanders was positioned to assume a larger role.
Tony, every year we see at least 1 to 2 teams. They were in last place in their division the year before. No one thought they'd be good, and then they were good. It almost seems like no one's even assuming the Browns can be that, but we see it happen every year. And I get the quarterback stuff, but like, correct me if I'm wrong, Tony. The Browns are trying to run the football, play good defense, not turn the ball over in the passing game, and try and take advantage when they can, correct? That's what they're trying to do.
That was the 2020 offense.
The Cleveland Browns are still searching for stability at quarterback. Deshaun Watson is yet to deliver consistent starter-level production that justifies his contract, and each game renews doubts about whether he can regain peak form. Behind him, rookie Dorian Thompson-Robinson shows promise but remains inexperienced and unpolished. Coaches are evaluating alternatives each week and may need to adjust the depth chart if progress stalls. The roster around them is built to contend now, so ongoing uncertainty under center is increasingly costly.
As we talk about, we do believe in best player available. We do believe in positional value, and we didn't necessarily expect him to be available in the in the 5th round, and so we love adding competition to every position room and adding him to compete with the guys that are already in there. We felt like that was the appropriate thing to do.
The Browns quarterback group is unsettled. Deshaun Watson has yet to provide the reliable, high-level play his contract demands, while rookie Dorian Thompson-Robinson remains promising but unpolished. Depth behind them consists mostly of veterans whose experience lies more in holding clipboards than leading offenses. The coaching staff needs an immediate answer, not a 3-year development project. Shedeur Sanders enters as that potential solution. At Colorado, he passed for more than 3,200 yards despite working behind one of college football's poorest offensive lines, consistently demonstrating poise, quick processing, and accurate ball placement under heavy pressure. Film shows steady reads and disciplined footwork, traits that offset concerns that his profile is built on family name or media attention. Cleveland viewed the signing as a low-risk, high-reward move. Early in camp, Sanders received a handful of first-team snaps intended merely as an evaluation. Those plays quickly changed practice tempo. The ball came out on time, receivers hit their landmarks, and the defense struggled to adjust. Coaches immediately expanded the review using phrases such as evaluate every option, an indication that the depth chart was no longer fixed. Watson sensed the scrutiny. Thompson-Robinson increased his urgency. Within minutes, competition in the quarterback room intensified. Sanders repeated that performance in subsequent sessions. His footwork remained clean, progression sharp, and throws firm and precise. Each strong rep forced staff to reassess the plan to keep him buried on the developmental track. The broader context magnifies the pressure. Cleveland's roster is built to contend now. Fans are weary of quarterback turnover, and the front office cannot afford another costly misstep under center. Around the league, rookie passers rarely wait multiple seasons anymore. Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, CJ Stroud, and even late pick Brock Purdy established that precedent. If Watson opens the regular season and struggles, public calls for Sanders will grow, especially if the rookie flashes in preseason. Alternatively, another team could attempt to acquire him if Cleveland hesitates to elevate his role. Each scenario underscores the same reality. Sanders' emergence has turned a routine camp evaluation into a critical decision point for the franchise.
And we saw Dylan Gabriel go 11-on-11 with the first team, Shedeur Sanders go 11-on-11 with the second unit. So that was really the big wrinkle today.
Yes, and of course, it was the first time that we have seen Shedeur Sanders get any of those coveted 11-on-11 reps. Of course, again, it wasn't with the first team offense or against the first team defense, but it's progress. And that means that he's going in the right direction, that the arrow is pointing up. He's coming up the learning curve. So that's good for him. And I actually thought just overall, he had a better day than Dylan had today. He completed more passes. He was more on point. In fact, in that 11-on-11 period, he threw a near touchdown.
Desperation can push franchises toward aggressive decisions, especially when their quarterback options appear unconvincing or outdated. One scenario now emerging is that Sanders earns enough confidence to take full preseason reps with the starters, forcing Cleveland to revisit a depth chart it believed was settled at the beginning of July. His practices demonstrate that the excitement around him is grounded in measurable performance. Accurate, high-velocity passes against first-team defenses, and confident command of the huddle. Each strong outing also heightens league-wide interest. Rival scouts adjust evaluations, and general managers revisit their notes, aware that a viable young quarterback may soon become available. Inside the facility, the personnel staff must balance short-term results with long-term roster planning, knowing that an early move could reshape salary cap allocations and locker room dynamics. The pressure on Watson and Thompson-Robinson escalates accordingly. Both must produce visible progress to maintain their current roles. Cleveland's recent history shows how quickly promising quarterback situations can devolve into controversy. The franchise has turned potential breakthroughs into organizational turmoil before, so observers remain cautious about how this competition will unfold. They have never loathed college football itself. They have resisted the people determined to reshape it. When Deion Sanders, black, direct, unapologetic, walks into a room of power brokers and speaks with authority instead of deference, critics recoil. During his playing days, they complained about celebrations and gold chains. Now that he is a head coach, mentor, and father, they label him something more polite, but just as dismissive, a problem. At Big 12 Media Days, Sanders addressed the accelerating chaos of the name, image, likeness market. He said college football needs a salary cap, not to hobble players, but to impose order on a system that showers unproven freshmen with seven-figure promises while the rest of a roster hunts for scraps. He called the situation unsustainable. Within hours, ESPN commentator Paul Feinbaum branded him a hypocrite, arguing that Sanders profited from NIL at Jackson State and now wants rules only because his most marketable athletes have moved on. The accusation spread quickly because it fit a comfortable storyline. Outspoken black coach gains from change, then protests when the advantage disappears. That framing ignores context. Sanders never criticized players earning money. At Jackson State, he urged corporate sponsors to partner with athletes who had been invisible to major brands for decades. What he wants now is stability, standardized guidelines, basic financial literacy, and roster balance that prevents locker rooms from fracturing over uneven payouts. When other coaches, Nick Saban, Dabo Swinney, Lane Kiffin, voiced similar concerns, they were praised for foresight. When Sanders spoke, the tone shifted to suspicion. The difference is not the message, it is the messenger. Feinbaum's response followed a familiar script. When black leaders question the structure of the sport, their motives are interrogated, their credibility attacked, and their competence doubted. He did not level the same charge at Jimbo Fisher when Fisher complained that NIL disturbed recruiting. He stayed silent when Kiffin lamented the transfer portal. But Sanders, who raised enrollment and television ratings at Jackson State, brought unprecedented attention to Colorado in one season and consistently mentors players beyond football, was called opportunistic. Feinbaum dismissed the cultural impact Sanders created, the exposure for historically black colleges, the draft picks developed, the infrastructure improved, reducing his work to a marketing stunt dependent on star sons, Shedeur and Shiloh, or two-way standout Travis Hunter. Sanders did not retaliate. He returned to practice, media obligations, and recruiting. His confidence is rooted in faith and in the responsibility he feels toward young athletes whose lives will extend decades beyond their highlight clips. When he asks for NIL boundaries, he is thinking about freshmen handed large sums without guidance, families unprepared for sudden wealth, and programs that abandon kids once production stalls. He has watched that cycle from the inside. He wants protections, not restrictions. Critics predicted Colorado would fade once Shedeur and Hunter leave. Instead, Sanders signed blue-chip quarterback G.J. Lewis and a wave of transfers eager to join a program that values personal growth as much as on-field wins. Recruits see a coach who challenges the status quo, who places black culture at the program's center without apology, and who will remain visible when social media buzz cools. They recognize that Sanders does not chase attention, attention follows his results. Media outlets reduced the upcoming Buffalo season to a win total prop. 6 victories, give or take. Sanders is playing a longer game. He wants to show young athletes, especially black athletes, that they can lead authentically, speak with conviction, and refuse to shrink for access. Success measured only by the scoreboard misses the point. If Sanders builds men who graduate with financial literacy, self-confidence, and community awareness, he will consider the mission successful, even if Colorado finishes with 5 wins instead of 10. None of that registers with commentators invested in an older hierarchy. For them, leadership should remain predictable, reserved posture, muted tone, minimal cultural expression. Sanders contradicts that image. The possibility that his methods could spread to other coaches, to other programs, threatens a model that has kept decision-making and revenue streams concentrated for generations. So the debate is not about hypocrisy or payroll ceilings. It is about control of the narrative and who is deemed qualified to write it. Sanders refuses to surrender that authority. He knows order is necessary. He also knows whose voices have been ignored whenever real reform is discussed. By speaking plainly, he forces television panels, athletic directors, and conference commissioners to confront issues they would rather defer: financial education, equitable resource distribution, and consistent national standards. Whether Colorado exceeds betting lines this fall will not change the trajectory Sanders has already set. He made Boulder relevant, energized recruiting beyond traditional power corridors, and broadened college football's cultural reach. that influence will persist long after social media debates cool. If his call for NIL structure eventually becomes policy, as the NCAA and Congress now contemplate, Feinbaum's soundbite will fade while Sanders' imprint endures. In the end, accusations of hypocrisy say more about the accuser than the coach. Sanders has remained consistent, empower athletes, hold adults accountable, and inject stability before unchecked money corrodes the locker room. The people who stand to lose clout in that environment prefer the chaos they can manipulate. Sanders prefers a system that nurtures the players who make the sport worth watching. His advocacy is rooted in experience, not self-interest, and his critics will have to decide whether to engage with that reality or keep shouting from the sidelines. Chris Carter's televised assessment of Shedeur Sanders triggered immediate pushback from Cleveland fans, local media, and even several Browns veterans. Carter dismissed Sanders, a fifth-round pick, as unprepared to start and framed the growing interest around him as purely a byproduct of surname recognition. Since that segment aired, practice reports have told a very different story. Observers inside the Browns facility describe a rookie quarterback who is closing the gap on Kenny Pickett and Dillon Gabriel with surprising speed. Sanders first turned heads in rookie minicamp by directing the huddle with a calm that belied his inexperience. Position coaches reported that he rarely repeated mental errors during installation periods, a trait they rank highly when grading young quarterbacks. In organized team activities, he showed consistent timing on intermediate routes, kept turnover numbers low in 7-on-7 periods, and demonstrated early command of Kevin Stefanski's protection calls. That steady execution earned him a handful of first-team snaps, reps that would ordinarily have belonged to Pickett by default. By mandatory minicamp, the rotation had shifted again. Practice notes from beat reporters detail the rise in Sanders' workload each day. Red zone series against the starting defense, 2-minute drills, and full field scrimmage possessions in which he checked out of called plays when fronts dictated it. Mary Kay Cabot, initially skeptical Sanders would challenge for game day snaps in 2025, wrote after consecutive sessions in mid-June that his footwork, release speed, and pocket management had, quote, meaningfully tightened since rookie camp. Her tone marked a clear departure from early spring projections that labeled Sanders a long-term developmental project. The broader quarterback context in Cleveland magnifies that progress. Deshaun Watson's availability and form remain uncertain after 2 injury-interrupted seasons, while Pickett's transition from Pittsburgh has been uneven. Dillon Gabriel's arm strength is evident, but coaches continue to stress hesitation in his full-field reads. Against that backdrop, Sanders' quick decision-making and mechanical efficiency have begun to look less like a pleasant surprise and more like the roster's most reliable short-term plan. Inside the locker room, acceptance has followed performance. Wide receivers cite Sanders' ball placement on outbreaking routes, noting that the ball routinely arrives on the upfield shoulder, a small but essential detail that allows for yards after the catch. Offensive linemen appreciate his pocket awareness. Joel Bitonio remarked privately that Sanders slides up instead of bailing when edge pressure flashes. Defensive backs say his eye discipline forces them to hold coverage longer than they expected against a rookie. Such cross-positional respect develops only when day-to-day tape shows tangible improvement. The reaction to Carter's critique highlights a recurring double standard applied to young black quarterbacks. Traits celebrated as swagger or confidence in other players were labeled arrogance when associated with Sanders, yet the quarterback himself has not responded publicly. There have been no subtle social media jabs, no mention of critics in interviews, only repeated references to competing for every rep and learning from veterans. That measured approach, combined with hard evidence from practice, has softened earlier doubts among coaches who prioritize demeanor as much as arm talent. Within the coaching staff, the discussion now centers on readiness thresholds. Stefanski's scheme relies heavily on quick rhythm throws, defined reads, and disciplined pocket movement. Those requirements align with Sanders' strengths: a compact release, willingness to target the middle of the field, and instinctive timing on RPO concepts carried over from his college tape. Staffers reviewing cut-ups from joint practices note that his internal clock already approximates NFL speed, a metric they did not expect to see until mid-season at best. If that trajectory continues through preseason games, the Browns face a consequential decision. Starting a 5th-round rookie 6 weeks after training camp opens would unsettle salary cap assumptions, depth chart politics, and external perceptions of organizational stability. Yet the internal mandate remains clear: the most prepared quarterback will play. That standard places Sanders in genuine contention because every practice metric used to grade readiness, turnover ratio, red zone efficiency, third down conversion rate has trended in his favor since early June. the organizational stakes are considerable. Cleveland has cycled through starting quarterbacks at a startling pace over the past decade, shifting from first-round investments like Baker Mayfield to high-cost gambles such as Watson, each move packaged as the long-awaited solution. A rookie chosen outside the first 100 picks ascending to the top of the depth chart would challenge long-held league assumptions about draft pedigree and opportunity. It would also validate the evaluation philosophy that prioritized Sanders' intangibles, processing speed, leadership presence, over conventional arm strength thresholds that pushed him down the draft board. Carter's televised remarks now sit awkwardly alongside daily updates from Berea. His critique relied on pre-draft labels and the presumption that a late-round passer with a famous father would need a redshirt year. Practice film contradicts that stance. Sanders checks protections at the line, manipulates safeties with shoulder fakes, and has reduced turnover-worthy throws in full-speed sessions to single digits. Statistics normally cited for veteran backups, not rookies. The longer that evidence accumulates, the more Carter's comments appear rooted in legacy bias rather than objective performance review. None of this guarantees Sanders will open the season under center. Preseason defenses test quarterbacks in ways practice cannot. Defensive coordinators will disguise pressure and boundary rotation to force late decisions. Sanders must show he can adjust protections and exploit mismatches without the benefit of a controlled environment. Yet within the Browns facility, the conversation has shifted from if he will be ready to when. Quiet confidence from Amari Cooper and other veterans suggests they believe Sanders can steady an offense searching for consistency more than highlight reel heroics. Sanders' rise also affects long-term roster calculus. If he earns the job and performs competently, Cleveland gains starter-level production on a cost-controlled rookie contract, freeing cap space allocated to other positions. That scenario could reshape roster-building strategy in a division featuring Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson, quarterbacks whose contracts consume significant percentages of team payroll. A capable, low-cost starter would allow the Browns to reinforce their offensive line and secondary while retaining core veterans, a competitive advantage few teams enjoy. For now, the focal point remains daily improvement. Sanders continues to arrive before sunrise, reviewing the previous day's install with the quarterback coach, then staying after practice to throw on-air routes with receivers low on the depth chart. Coaches track those habits closely because consistent routine underpins performance when adversity strikes in live games. Each incremental gain strengthens the argument that readiness depends on preparation and aptitude, not draft slot. Carter's segment reminded the league how quickly assessments can become outdated when they lean on perception over evidence. Sanders' steady climb up the depth chart underscores the counterpoint. In the NFL, tape is the final arbiter. Should Sanders translate practice efficiency to preseason success, the Browns may discover that the solution to their long-standing quarterback riddle arrived quietly in the 5th round, carrying little more than confidence and a willingness to work.